welcome to this week's Technology for Good show. This is episode 70 something, around the 79 mark, I think.
I think we are.
I'm losing count at this point. Today is Black Friday, so there's nobody watching. I'm sure everyone's off out fighting their way through crowds to buy stuff. Chris, say hi.
Hi, Chris Kernan, Principal Consultant at Bluefin Solutions and an SAP mentor. Just general lover of technology and usual co-host. So thank you very much for having me back.
Cheers, Chris. And myself, Tom Raftery. I work for Redmonk. I'm an industry analyst looking into clean tech and loving this kind of sector and grateful to have Chris on the show again as my co-host this week.
No problem, Tom. Happy to be here. It's one of the highlights of my week.
Likewise. We'll head into the stories, and it's been a funny week in terms of stories, in terms of tech stories. I think with Thanksgiving in the UK, the number of tech stories is down a bit, which is unsurprising. It just means we'll have a lot of them next week.
Yeah.
But because of the COP21, the climate conference in Paris next week, there's a lot of energy and climate stories. So we're kind of climate and energy heavy this week, and a little, I won't say tech light, but lighter than normal.
Yeah.
So the first story, and we always start with a bit of bad news, and then we head into the good news. So the bad news is this blog post from the Scripps Institute, and the Scripps Oceanographic Institute is based in San Diego. And basically, they've been running this experiment in Hawaii since 1958, where they've been measuring the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And it's in a place called Mauna Loa. And it's above the thermal inversion layer, so it's not affected by local CO2 levels. It's up high, so it's taking the CO2 readings from basically from everywhere. It doesn't have local impacts, or local impacts don't affect it, and what you see when you look at the graph that they have of the CO2 in Mauna Loa is it looks something like this.
Yeah.
And what you have here, so this graph this data was taken on the 24th, so 3 days ago, and it gives 400.53 parts per million of CO2. And on the left-hand side, we have 1958 all the way out to the 24th of November, 2015. And it's got this kind of, sawtooth look on it, because the CO2 levels rise and fall with the seasons every year.
Yes.
But what happens, as you can see from this graph, is that it's going, up and to the right, which, if this was a sales graph would be awesome, but when it's a pollution graph or levels of pollution graph, not as good.
So that graph you're seeing there, if you go onto Wikipedia for the Keeling curve, you see. So you've referred to the sawtooth there, but you actually have the sine wave.
I'll show you that in a sec.
Cool.
So the green line across here, this green line, is the 400 parts per million line, and basically, the first time we crossed that 400 parts per million line was, if memory serves correctly, the 9th of May, 2013. And we stayed above 400 parts per million for a few days. The next time we crossed it was in 2014, and we stayed above it for 3 months. And the next time we crossed it again was 2015, and we stayed above it for 6 months, and we've just gone above it again in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And what the blog post from the Scripps Institute is saying is that it is never, ever, ever, ever in our lifetimes going to go below 400 ever again. And the reason for that is because next year, at the time you would expect it to go back down. So this is the kind of sine wave you're talking about.
Yeah.
So this is as you roll the mouse across here, you get different time periods. So I was looking at the full record. If I skip back to 2 years, so this is from 2 years ago to today. So you had the above it for 3 months here, above it for 6 months here in 2015, then drops back down and then goes back up, and just towards the end of the graph goes above it again. So this white area here, where it was below 400 parts per million this summer, from kind of August to November, next year that'll be above the green line because of the El Nino effect. The El Nino effect always keeps it, you know, a little bit higher than usual, and they're saying that based on typical El Nino effects, and this being a particularly strong one, it's not going to go below the 400 next summer, and therefore it will never, ever, ever go below 400 again, which is pretty scary.
That is very scary.
If we look at it over 6 months, you can see there it dips below it in August, comes back up there on the right in November, go back down to 1 month. You can see it goes above the 400 just here, which is around the 12th of November. So the 12th of November 2015, well, let's say the 11th of November. The 11th of November 2015 may well be the last time in human history that CO2 levels were below 400 parts per million.
Wow.
So that's our bit of, you know, bad news out of the way. So we'll move on and try and get some good news stories going, because otherwise people are just going to you know, start getting out the whiskey, and that might not be a bad thing on the other hand.
Oh, well, I wouldn't turn it down, like. Rude. Oh, I'm more than happy with that.
So we'll get on to the good news, so people can celebrate. What can a technologist do about climate change? And again, the links for these stories are all on the normal Google Plus page. So if you want to follow along, you can click on the links. They're in order that we're doing them. And this article, I don't know. I know I sent you the links late today, Chris. So I don't know if you had a chance to browse this article, but it's a really, really in-depth article. It is one of the best articles I've read on the kinds of things we as technologists can do to reduce our impact on the environment and to help everyone else, you know, reduce their impact.
To be honest with you, I took a look at it. I've been pretty busy today, but one of the good things about it is I love this article for a couple of reasons, right? It goes through very, very clearly, as in what can you as a person actually do.
Yeah.
So you've got things like how can you invest in it? Okay, how can you produce it? How can you consume it? Okay, what can you do as an engineer or a scientist? How can you contribute? So there are things like tools for problem finding, where you can actually, if you have an interest in data, these are things that you can actually, tools that you can use or tools you can contribute to, which is phenomenal. So as a top to bottom view on what you can do as a technologist, it's actually a fascinating article.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's really, really good.
Really, really good. So that's one of the things that I actually find very, 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 very good about it. So I have it here, and I'm going to read it more in depth. Yeah. But there were definitely a couple that jumped out at me. So it's things like, they give you things like, the coordination about how you can coordinate what you actually consume, and things like demand flexibility. And there's a couple of very, very nice graphs there. Then there are also things like, the funding. So you can actually do private investment, and you can see things like, the clean tech bubble. So there's some very, very nice things that you can do here. Some lovely graphs, some very, very nice graphs, some great infographics in the article.
It's amazing, isn't it? And it's unbelievably comprehensive. So it's a long read. It is a long read, but it goes into huge. It is totally worth it. It goes into huge detail on lots of different aspects, and it's the way it's approached, the way it's structured. It makes a ton of sense, and it's broken down and presented really well. I think for anyone who's in the technology space, you know, this is a definite should read.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, I couldn't recommend it enough to people to actually read.
Yeah. I was amazed when I saw it and went down through it at just how good it is and how well thought out it is.
Yeah. But then there are also things like, you know, we were talking about it before. We have ThingMonk coming up in December, which is the conference that RedMonk, one of the
it's our IoT conference.
Yes, it's your IoT conference, which will go through things like this. You know, how as a technologist you can actually, you know, all the really cool things that you can do.
Yeah. I actually should send a link to this to everyone who's going to be presenting at ThingMonk to see if it, you know, gives them any ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you should. You should.
Anyhow, we'll move on. It's there's as usual a ton of stories, and this next one is interesting as well. It's a study out of was it Stanford? I think it was Stanford. Stanford University. Mark Jacobson, director of the Atmosphere Energy Program at Stanford University, who worked with the University of California colleagues to analyze energy roadmaps for 139 countries. And basically, it's saying the world could run entirely on wind, solar, and hydropower by 2050. So technically, what they're saying is technically not a problem. The issue is political will.
Yeah,
you know, the technology is easy to fix. The political will, not as much.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And the interesting thing is that, you know, this guy, you know, Mark Jacobson, is such a leading light. So he's published many books. I've seen him do TED Talks and things like that, but he's a civil engineer, and he does environmental engineering. So this is a guy. He's not strictly a climate scientist. He's an engineer.
Yeah.
So when he's talking about this stuff, he's not coming at it from a sort of an environmental. Well, he is coming at it from an environmental point of view, but you know, he's coming at it from an engineering standpoint. How do we get from point A to point B?
Yeah.
So when I listen to him, it's a lot more credible. It's the same way we talk about these reports coming from Deloitte or from Accenture about the opportunity cost of climate change.
Yeah, and it's what's different, I guess, is because he's an engineer, he takes a more solution-based approach.
Yeah,
you know, which is kind of refreshing, and he's not kind of bogged down with what's the word I'm looking for?
The emotion.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. That's what I was looking for. He would be less emotive than I would be, for example, about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll go on. So this was interesting. I thought China is crushing the US on renewable energy. Whatever about crushing the US, this is grist, and a lot of these articles have these stupid headlines. But the point in this article that's really interesting is the amount of investment. What they say here, China's clean energy investment alone outpaced the US, the UK, and France combined, and that's according to numbers from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, who are pretty credible in this space. And across 55 major non-OECD countries, the likes of India, Brazil, China, and Kenya, clean energy investment reached $126 billion in 2014, 39% higher than 2013. And they have some nice charts on it there as well. And you can see the non-OECD countries, the growth is going up all the time, and it's surpassed the OECD countries in this last year.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pretty amazing stuff. And, you know, they break it out in terms of oil and gas there as well. It's a superb article. Again, you know, well worth a read. Even go back to the Bloomberg, and for anyone who isn't subscribed to Bloomberg New Energy Finance have a good weekly newsletter as well, so it's well worth signing up for that. Now, despite the kind of thrashing that headline gives the US there, we see this report coming out in New York, where Governor Cuomo has decided to order a large increase in renewable energy in New York by 2030. He's setting an aim there, and he's not just setting an aim, he's actually getting it written down and put it in kind of set in stone, if you want, yes. That they get a goal of 40% reduction in carbon emissions from plants supplying the state's electricity. So it's they want to mandate that by 2030, half of all the power is generated from renewable resources, and this is still this may be a bit of a kite flying exercise because it hasn't actually happened, and they're saying that, you know, this is what Governor Cuomo wants. So as I say, it may well be a kite flying exercise, but it looks extremely positive.
Well, it does. It does look extremely positive. You know, when you have these things written down in legislature, then they do have a habit of actually coming true. You know, he was elected in 2010. So I don't know what the duration of the mayorship actually is, whether it's 4 years or what. I think was he re-elected? It's 4 years actually. He was re-elected in 2014, so he's halfway. He's just come through. So if he gets this and gets it passed by the time, when did they want to do it again? It's 2030. So yeah, if he manages to get it passed and gets it written in the legislature, it will happen. You know, nobody's actually going to repeal that. Can you imagine how unpopular it would be? You know, let's face it. Both legislatures in Canada and Australia started to repeal this type of legislation and get kicked out.
Yeah.
So he's making a stand, and yes, it's something he wants. But you know, New York is. It's an interesting place. So it is. You know, is it normally a democratic state, or is it it's a swing state from what I remember, or is it quite heavily democratic?
I've no idea.
I can't remember. You know,
no idea.
Rudy Giuliani, he was a Republican. I think it's a swing state. It's just, you know, best man for the job, best man or woman for the job. So.
Maybe Tammy or Sue could tell us. They're apparently watching.
Yeah. So for me, actually, I really want to see it. I think it could be a leading light. You know, New York has always been a trailblazer in terms of legislation. So it has.
They're in California.
Yeah, they're in California. So if they do this and they actually manage to do it. You know, because not only are we going for renewable, we're also going for such a large decrease in carbon dioxide emissions. You 40% in 15 years. That's a lot.
It is, yeah. And Tammy's asking, I wonder if he has funding for this mandate, which is an interesting question. I think one of the things there is they want to shut down the coal plants. So if they have to, if they want to shut down the coal plants and they need to build new generation, the renewables might actually be the cheaper choice. anyway. So okay, and Tammy's also saying New York is very democratic. So
fair enough, that works.
That works. That works. So yeah, it might be the cheaper choice. So we'll see. We'll see. Anywho, we'll keep going. See if I can find which screen I'm supposed to be bringing up. Here we go. There it is. Share. That's it. Okay. So Allianz, the insurance company, they are making a 2 trillion euro statement about coal divestment, according to this article, and this comes from the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah.
The latest company turning its back on coal. They're a financial services giant, and their chairman, Oliver Bate, was one of 78 corporate leaders to sign a letter urging nations to strike bold and ambitious pact to combat climate change at the UN conference in Paris. They went further than that group letter, though, and they're vowing to shift their investments out of coal and significantly into renewables. So it's not just that they're getting out of coal, they're then moving that money into renewables. They will no longer invest in mining companies and utilities that generate more than 30% of their energy or sales from coal, he was quoted as saying. So, I mean, that's right there, that's huge. According to Reuters, it'll be conducted over a 6-month period, so it's a very short time. And they will see investment in wind doubled to 4 billion euros. So the comments come as Allianz, which has almost 2 trillion under management, prepares to hold a major investment day in Munich on Wednesday. So, I mean, they're not the first to do this, but they're certainly one of the biggest.
Yeah.
They 2 trillion under investment. They're not going to, not all the 2 trillion is in fossil fuels, obviously, but a portion of it would be. And, you know, it's another nail in the coffin, you got to think, for fossil fuels, which is great to see. More of this, the better. And again, they're not the only ones. Unilever, and that's the next story. Unilever have come out and said that they're doing similar. What they're saying is that they're going to stop using coal for energy within 5 years. And again, Unilever have been quite vocal about this kind of stuff as well. It's not the first time coming out and saying something like this, but they've now pledged to eliminate it completely within 5 years and derive all of its energy worldwide solely from renewable sources by 2030.
Yeah. So you see, this is the interesting thing. These companies and the people who are making these decisions, these people have the ear of governments.
Yeah, and they have big wallets as well.
They do. So which
is why they have the ear of governments.
Yes, exactly. So when you actually start to look at it, you actually see, these people are making these choices, and at times, they are difficult choices. But it means that it can give governments the courage to also make these choices, and that's sometimes what's needed. Sometimes the governments know that these choices are correct, but they are afraid to make them, because of the backlash, because then they won't get re-elected and things like that there. And every government every political party wants to be elected, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons, sometimes because they make these choices because they haven't finished the job that they originally set out to do, and they choose what they consider to be the lesser of two evils. Sure. But when you look at companies like Allianz, like Unilever, standing up and saying, enough, we're not doing it anymore, this is what we're going to do, this is the new plan, you'd be a fool as a government not to look at it and go, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the tech giants, the Microsoft is 100% renewable. We've seen Google, who are about 40% directly from renewables and the rest from carbon credits. The same with SAP on their facilities. The same with Apple on their everything. and those are the main, and Facebook are going that direction as well. And Facebook, in fairness, they started badly, but then they got better. They put in place a data center siting policy, which says that they will only site their data centers where they have access to renewable power, and they're one of the few companies to do that. Apple do it as well. So it's really impressive. But now we're seeing it break outside of the tech sphere into people like Unilever and Allianz, which is even better again. Because you kind of expect the tech companies, to be that way. You don't necessarily expect the Unilevers to be that way.
No, definitely not. But you think about what Unilever's actual energy consumption and cost is, given what it is and the size of company it is. It must be phenomenal.
Yeah.
So must be, now, granted, they I would imagine they'll be buying a lot of credits on the back of that.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry. Cortana has preempted me, but yeah, they must be buying a reasonable amount of credits, but at the same time they must also be auditing a lot closer what their energy consumption is, which again can only be a good thing, because even if as a publicly traded company, it has to be it must be transparent about that, about where its investments are.
Correct.
So
correct, and that they'll be reporting into the Carbon Disclosure Project as well. So there'll be transparency for us there as well, because anyone can go along to the Carbon Disclosure Project, get a login, and see any company's reported emissions.
Exactly. But the other thing is when you look at two of those companies from the previous story from Allianz, okay, these list of major companies, you have Dow Chemical and Jindal Steel and Power, which are traditionally thought of as quite heavily polluting industries. Chemical what's the word? Chemical manufacturer or whatever is not
the firms, yeah.
Well, no, Dow Chemical is actually it's an actual.
Oh, sorry, yeah, gotcha.
It's an actual chemical manufacturing and company, industrial company, and Jindal Steel and Power. These are not what you would call clean industries.
No,
and yet they are still standing up and saying, actually, we think coal is not a sustainable energy source, which is phenomenal.
It is. It's amazing. It is. It's fantastic to see. It is. It's really heartening. More of it, as we should say.
Absolutely. So game on. Keep moving.
All right. So the next story I saw that I thought was interesting is one that's actually reasonably local to myself. Endesa are my utility company, and they've announced candidates for a hackathon for an energy efficiency project. Now, this is interesting because you don't normally see utility companies running hackathons.
No.
Now, I did approach two utility companies a couple of years back off the back of conversations I had with SAP. SAP approached me and said that they'd be interested in running a hackathon, and could I line up a couple of utilities? And I said yes. Well, I said I'd give it a go, and I talked to two utility companies, and the two I talked to both said they'd be willing to do it, where they would free up like 6 or 12 months of anonymized users' data. But then something fell through on the SAP side and it never went ahead. I'm hoping it will still go ahead, but we would have been in there first had that not fallen through. But now Endesa are there and they're running this hackathon, and what they're doing is they're trying to do it today and tomorrow, 27th and 28th of November, to get mobile applications around energy efficiency. So it's slightly different to the kind of thing I was thinking of doing. What I was thinking is get smart meter data and try and come up with useful uses of the data. And there's any kinds of number of things you could come up with around that. It seems Endesa are a little more narrow around it. They want it to be specifically around energy efficiency, and they want it specifically to be mobile applications. But I would have thought a combination of mobile and web would at least be the way to go.
Mm. Well, it's interesting. They've selected the 40 finalists so that they. It's not. In my head, it's not really a true hackathon. Hackathon is you just turn up and you start playing. But having said that, the fact that they've selected 40 finalists mean that the output is actually going to be highly polished and highly usable in many ways. And the prize fund is pretty respectable. It's €6,000 for first prize, and then 1 and 3 for second and third respectively. So, and then they're going to keep developing, after the application or after the competition. So from that point of view, it's good. It's a win-win for a lot of people. But yeah, it's one of those ones that we run them in the UK, or there's a hackerspace quite close to me called Farset Labs, and we've had banking hackathons, we've had energy hackathons, that sort of stuff where we actually work with industry and stuff, and this fits with that really well. And it's really cool to have industry come in and basically say, we've got a problem, can you help us with it? And just see what people come up with, because there's some amazing ideas, phenomenal.
Yeah. It's the idea that comes, or the example that comes to mind for me every time I think about this, is the one of Orange in Liberia back in 2011. The mobile phone company, where they released 6 months of their users' anonymized data. So you had 6 months of a mobile phone company's data being put out there, and they put a competition in place to see who could come up with the best use of their users' data. And the winning entry was by, I think, a group out of IBM, who looked at the mobile phone users' data and saw where the mobile phone users were traveling to and from. And then they compared this to the public transport routes.
Yeah.
And they were able to say, okay, we can improve the public transport routes by making 10% more efficient by actually mapping the routes onto where people are going every day.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very, it was kind of a left field use of mobile phone data, one that wouldn't naturally occur. And there's bound to be use cases like that in the energy space as well.
My doorbell's just got to be right back.
Okay, no problem. Live. This is what happens when you go live. So the next story is one out of Apple, in fact, and it's where they announced this week that they are open sourcing their Swift programming language, and this is interesting because they're going to put it up on GitHub. I don't think they've put it up there yet, or they hadn't by the time the article was written, and I haven't checked. Swift is the language they launched last year. It's now in version 2, and it's what is now being used to write applications for OS X and iOS. But what they're saying in the article is when it's open sourced, it can be further developed, obviously. And it can be put up, or it can be used to create applications potentially for Android. And in fact, there was somebody who did that. Let's see, ArcTouch wrote a proof of concept calculator for both Android and iOS using Swift last year. So the open sourcing of it can only mean that it'll become more popular, and also that it will become broader in terms of its use and in terms of its it will probably be ported, for example, onto Windows and Linux, which, as far as I know, it isn't at the moment. So it's already a very popular programming language. So as I say, this will absolutely make it more and more popular. I was just saying, Chris, about the Swift programming language, and it's being open source. And I was just saying, it's already a popular language. This is only going to make it more popular. It'll likely be ported to Linux and Windows, as well as it's being on OS X. And it will make it easier to program for multiple platforms now, because it should be possible to write something in Swift and have it run on iOS, OS X, Linux, Android, Windows Phone, whatever.
Yeah, no, I remember last year, Brenton O'Callaghan and John Appleby did a great demo using Swift for SAP stuff,
right,
at Tech Ed in Las Vegas, and I was stunned by how easy it was. I know Brenton's talented anyway, but don't tell him I said that.
Between you, me, and these four walls.
Exactly, you, me, and these four walls. But it was amazing just how much simpler people find Swift over the previous Apple development language, which what is that called?
Is it Xcode?
Xcode, yeah.
By the way, Gareth is pulling your leg there, saying that you're a real pro with the arguments with your phone and the random doorbells.
Yeah, I know. It's dreadful. So the Eliza and Lucy have just come back from their walk, and they are just horrifically muddy. So the kitchen floor is just a sea of muddy footprints. So I've just had to keep them in the kitchen. So I have and mop the kitchen floor whenever I'm done.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay. Always a bit of fun.
Oh God.
Speaking of open, we have the new Raspberry Pi Zero.
Yes.
A $5 computer. I mean, that's just insane. Raspberry Pi, the makers of the Raspberry Pi A and B and A plus and B plus, if I remember correctly, they've brought out this little guy. You can see it there, sitting on a $5 note, tiny little thing. It's got, and you can see some of the specs here. It's got a Broadcom 2835 processor, which is 40% faster than the original Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
512 megs of RAM, micro SD slot, mini HDMI, micro USB, 40-pin GP10, identical pin out to the A/B, unpopulated composite video header, and smallest form factor yet, 65 by 30 by 5. As I say, that's it, sitting on a $5 bill. I mean, we've talked before about the democratization of technology. That's just boom.
Oh, I just can't believe it. I really, really, really just cannot believe it. I've ordered my connection kit. So for the micro HDMI and the USB, or the micro USB, out before I even have the computer, simply because I want it, and I know I'm gonna get one. So I've ordered the connectivity for it before I even got the actual the tool for it. But think about it, I could have that actually is enough power for me to have a media server or a backup server running on battery power. The board's so simple, you can actually use rechargeable batteries with it.
Yep.
So it is, and I could switch off the HP micro server that I have sitting under the desk.
No, it's amazing. It really is. I mean, if ever there was a what they say a mic drop moment, boom, that was it. That was it. By the way, Neil Stabile is correcting us there. The Xcode is the IDE. Objective-C was the language.
Objective-C. That's what it was. Yes.
Silly us.
I although having said that, I always objected to Objective-C as a horrible language. So that is
never tried it.
Yeah, I had delusions of trying it, and just no, definitely not. Definitely not. But then again, I'm no developer. I think there are now laws in place against me actually touching code in a commercial sense. I'm allowed to hack it out for myself, but God, I should never subject any sensible person to looking at my code.
But it's astonishing, really, when you think about it. I mean, Apple not really known for being open source and open sourcing Swift. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty astounding.
It is. It is.
Speaking of open, IBM has opened up one of their own applications. It's a program for machine learning.
Yeah.
It's called System ML. I can see it here. No, that's too much. Right there, System ML. The ML obviously stands for machine learning. Basically, so they're not the only ones to have done that. So far this year, Facebook and Google have both open sourced machine learning stuff. Yeah. Facebook did its Torch software and Google did its TensorFlow system. So there's a big move at the moment to be open sourcing machine learning technologies. And I think the main reason behind that is because it's so difficult. It's so hard to do this stuff. It's really specialized stuff.
It is.
And so as a consequence, it's hard to get good talent to develop these kinds of programs. Yeah. And one of the best ways to get that talent is to open source the software and then see who is doing the commits to the software, and then approach them and go, hey, would you like to come and work for us, kind of thing. And the one of the points they make in this article is that one of the companies working on machine learning who have not open sourced anything is Apple. And this is actually hurting their effects at recruitment, apparently. Of course, Apple being as secretive as they are, this is all guesswork, I guess, on the part of the journalists.
It's interesting because the open sourcing is can be a great tool, but the for recruitment and things like that. But it's also on the other side as well, is that because it is such a specialized field, because it is it's that there are a lot of we're using machine learning at the moment in terms of data analysis. Yeah. And those types of applications, the big data platforms which have all taken hold have all been based on open source. So you've got Hadoop, you've got Spark, all of which are driven out from open source projects, or that now exist under the Apache framework. When you want to use these types of machine learning algorithms or applications, pairing them with open source software is the right way to go, and it's just a natural extension then to take it forward and open source them as well. Correct. That way you're already tied into a community and you have the support of that community. So it is pretty interesting.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it is. It's although the Apache Foundation is something I find very interesting. They're managing so many projects at the moment. So I haven't seen anybody actually doing sort of any analysis on the Apache Foundation to see whether those projects are being managed effectively or what the overall outcome is. And that's when you have especially such an important foundation, something that has a very what's the word I'm looking for? The Apache license, for example, is one of the most important licenses in software. Yeah. So that is.
Yeah.
And I must make a note to do a little bit of digging around the Apache Foundation just to see. It's a foundation I don't know an awful lot about. I know about the Apache license. I know about Apache as the open source, sort of the vanguard of open source, as it were. But I don't know all that much about how the foundation cells actually run.
I don't know enough either. I mean, we in Red Monk, we have Eclipse coming to our events and speaking at our events regularly, the Eclipse Foundation. But
that's Michael, is it Mike?
Mike Milinkovic, yeah. And you know, Mike's a great guy, always a really good presenter, lovely guy as well to chat to. And Ian as well turns up to our events. But we haven't had anyone, if I recall, we haven't had anyone from the Apache Foundation speak at our events, which is unusual. I'm not sure why not. I mean, they are a client.
Yeah. Some of them must actually look at.
We'll keep going. And we're sticking with the open theme for at least one more story.
Yes.
And that's the one about WordPress. So WordPress, I mean, WordPress has been open source since the very start.
Yes.
Since the days of, was it Cafe Press was the original one back in 2002, that kind of ballpark?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah.
Something like that anyway. Before they rebranded as WordPress. And it's always been open source and always been PHP. And you know, one of the cool things about PHP was it's very easy to get into. You know, even I could get in and muck around and not fuck it up too badly. It's easy to read, easy to code. But they've had problems with it scaling, I guess, is the biggest issue with the PHP. And they've kept it going despite, you know, it becoming such a big monster. I mean, we saw the figures last week of it now powering 25% of the websites online.
Yeah.
And all this running out of a PHP backend. It's a testament that they managed to keep it up running on PHP. You know, it really is. You know, it is involved. But anyway, the story is that they've shifted it out of PHP and into JavaScript. Yeah. So it's still open source. The curious thing about WordPress is it comes in a number of flavors.
Yeah.
You can download the software and run it on your own site, or run it on your own server.
You can run it on your Raspberry Pi.
Exactly. Or you can download the multi-user version of it.
Yep.
Stick it up on your server and host multiple sites, all with different domains. Or you can go to WordPress.com and just use their hosted version of it.
Yes.
It's the WordPress.com version that's after getting this JavaScript upgrade. But if you use the Jetpack plugin, you can do it on your own hosted version as well, which is interesting.
I do use the Jetpack plugin.
Right.
So really, really good for analytics and things like that. You know, so you can see who's coming in, you know, where they're spending their time, all that sort of stuff. So quite interesting.
Have you upgraded to the JavaScript version yet?
No, not yet. Actually, this is the first I'm hearing about it. So I'll jump onto my my hosted WordPress one and take a quick look.
Yeah, because I've had a very quick look at a couple of sites that I have up there on WordPress.com.
Yeah,
and it's nice. It's very different looking. It's a big change in terms of the UI. It's a nice light feel to it. So I think they've done a great job, and it's very responsive as well. So no, they've done a good job on it, I have to say.
Excellent.
So, all right, we've a few more stories to go. The next story is a bit of a change of pace. I couldn't really get any decent segues for the last couple of stories because they're all in very different topics, but we'll try this. Speaking of Google. They've decided to build app streaming. So this is an unusual one, I guess. Basically, it means they can stream the functionality of an app to you through a browser, even if you don't have the app installed, or particularly if you don't have the app installed. I guess you wouldn't need the app streamed to you if you had it installed. I guess it's an interesting one for them, because if they're serving it to you, they can also get to serve you ads along with it. Whereas if you're within an app, you might not see those ads.
When I first read this during the week, I thought this was actually massively interesting, because it would mean that you wouldn't necessarily have to have the app on your phone, but you could still take advantage of the functionality of the app.
Yep.
But when I read into it a little bit more deeply, I think you're right. It does allow the ads to filter through much more effectively. But yeah, I was looking at it from an Android point of view. So if I wanted to use Booking.com or something like that there, and I put it into Google, and Google turned around and said, well, rather than using their website, why don't we actually, we'll stream the app to you? We said it makes a lot more sense, the native app, and then I don't have to install it.
Yeah.
I run it as a, on the handset side, and then whenever I log out, the context is gone.
Yeah.
So that I actually find really quite cool. But then it depends on your connectivity and what sort of signal area you're in. Things like that.
It depends on your handset as well. I mean, for people with lower end handsets, with maybe not a lot of memory on them, the requirement to not have to install the apps, as you mentioned, is quite advantageous. The only cost really then is the cost of the data that you're downloading for the functionality of the app, and any ads they send you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is. It's pretty cool. The other thing it also helps you do is, always being in the most up-to-date version of the app.
Yeah. True. Good point.
Yeah.
We'll keep going. There's not much more, I think, to say about that one.
No.
I see that we've talked about Apple Pay a lot on the show, and now they're trying to roll it out in China. By February, they're talking to all the banks there, and they seem to have them all kind of lined up in a row, and it seems like it's going to go ahead. There's a couple of other contactless payment systems in China already, so they won't be the first in there. But China is an enormous market, and Apple have a huge slice of the handset market in China.
Yeah.
They're perceived as a high quality item and incredibly desirable. So they have a very high percentage of the handset market in China. So it'll be a big one for them. If and when they do launch it. I'm still waiting for them to launch it here in Spain. It's bugging the crap out of me. I don't know what the holdup is. It's been it's over a year now since I launched Apple Pay.
So the great thing about it is, so there are two things. There's one thing about the story, and there's one thing about what you said, right? So going back to what you said about the Apple being seen as a luxury brand in China.
Yeah.
There's a phenomenal story about a tech journalist who had his phone stolen, and he ended up being a celebrity in China because he used the Find My iPhone thing to find where his phone was. He started to get pictures coming up in his iCloud and things like that. He put on Twitter a picture of the guy who had his phone, because it was stolen the order and it was resold in China.
Right.
And lots of these people actually came on and said, this was on Twitter, I know who this person is. And he joined their social network, is it Baidu?
Tencent or WeChat or Baidu is a search engine.
Right. Okay. So yes, you're right. So
Tencent maybe or WeChat.
Something like that. But he actually ended up going and actually staying and visiting the man who had his phone.
Right.
And things like that. It was, when he arrived at the airport, there were a couple of hundred people waiting for him. Like, this guy was famous. He joined their social media network and started talking to these people and all the rest. It was absolutely insane. And the guy had bought the phone in reasonably good faith and all the rest of it. But one of the things that is apparent in China is just the level of fraud. and Apple Pay makes it more difficult actually to conduct that fraud. So, because you're not passing credit card numbers, it's a one-time code generated by Apple. It actually increases the security of the transaction. So I can see why the Chinese banks are actually very much in favor of it. Why you don't have it in Spain is anybody's guess, but I presume quite a lot of it's to do with just inertia within the banking system itself.
I presume so. It's really frustrating because being a bit of a techie myself and having an iPhone, it's something I have wanted to do for the longest time. And I do a lot of travel as well, so if I didn't have to bring my credit cards with me wherever I was going and I could just use the phone to do it, I would be a lot happier. I had my wallet stolen earlier this year. Yeah, and I lost all the credit cards, and I had to go through the hassle of and getting them all back again and stuff. If I didn't have to bring the credit card with me, if I could have left it at home, things would have been a lot handier.
Yeah, that you had to travel not long after that, didn't you? Actually, it was Monkey Gra. It was Monkey Gra. You had it stolen just before Monkey Gra, and you had to have your credit card delivered to London or something. Or was that somebody else?
No, that was somebody else.
That must be somebody else. Yeah,
that was somebody else. I had it stolen in April, I think it was, and Monkey Gra's in January, February, the end of January.
Right.
So, but no, it was no. You're right. You're right and wrong. So it wasn't Monkey Gra. It was to Sapphire.
Sapphire, yes. That's
so
right.
I had my American Express card sent to the hotel in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I collected it there. Yeah, that's how it went.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll move on. The second to last story is one about tech tattoos.
Yes.
So it's kind of biohacking, and the story is basically you can see this girl here is getting this circuit placed on her arm. And the idea is that it's a lot less invasive to get something like this rather than getting the kind of chip under the skin in your arm kind of thing that we saw talked about a week ago. We didn't discuss it on the show here, but I saw a couple of images of people having these chips under their arm for things like keyless entry and stuff like that. I thought that's just a bit extreme. And what they're positing here in this article is that you could use it for things like, pulse, blood pressure, all those kind of things. Monitoring similar to what wearables do, but you can get a lot when you're actually on the skin like that. You can get a lot more granular data.
Yeah, no, it is awesome. We talked earlier on about Kevin Warwick, the professor who is the favorite or the Captain Cyborg, according to the journalist at the Register.
Yeah.
He's had several things implanted under his skin. He's had RFID tags for keyless entry and things like that, and also to track his as a what's the word I'm looking for? To track his vital signs and things. So, but the problem, a lot of the biohacking is not without its risks. And there were the guys who dripped liquid chlorophyll into their eyes to give themselves night vision, which was it was nuts. Seriously, you should Google it or go onto YouTube and find it.
I've seen it. The eyes look totally weird.
Oh, the eyes are just completely black.
Yeah.
So they are. But they did have night vision, which was just absolutely insane. But I think as an interim step, I would try this. It's a temporary tattoo. I would love to give it a go.
Yeah.
And see how it went. I think it'd be fascinating.
It'd be mad because it's at least if it's just something that's stuck onto your arm, you can take it off, and there's no it's not like a tattoo which is permanent, and it's not like any of these things that are under your skin that leave scars or whatever. It's non-invasive. It makes a lot of sense. We have a question from Neil Stabile on battery technology. I'm not sure exactly what he's asking, but Neil, if you're still watching, I wrote a blog post on Green Monk last week. I wrote another blog post this week, so it's the second article on Green Monk. So if you go to greenmonk.net and scroll down, it's the article entitled "The Future of Electric Utilities: Change and Disruption Ahead." And I've just 2 graphs there on batteries. And the first one here shows, from 2005 to projected out to 2030, but the actual data goes as far as 2014. You can see the black line here is the cost of batteries in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour. And you can see there the cost of batteries is just going down, 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 and projected to continue doing so. No reason why it wouldn't. And the other one is the battery density or battery capacity. And again, it's going up, 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 up in this case. So, and again, it's from kind of 94 out to 2020 projected, but with actual data from about 2000 up to about 2012, I'm guessing that is. But again, you can see the linear fit line there going the right direction, up and to the right. So I'm not sure what your actual question is, Neil, but basically batteries are getting cheaper and they're getting more energy dense, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
So we've one last story to go, and it's about Uber. Speaking of transportation and batteries and stuff. So Uber have now started to do an Uber Health kind of application where you can get doctors or nurses to come to you. It's kind of a project thing. It's not an actual business at the moment yet. But what they were doing, for example, is you could get nurses to come and administer flu shots for $10, that kind of thing. So they were hoping to vaccinate as many as 10,000 people across 36 cities. They've hired a health advisor, this guy, John Brownstein, who's director of computational epidemiology at Boston Children's Hospital. So they've just done it for flu shots so far. They've vaccinated 2,000 people, 2,050 people, and they wrote it up in the journal or the Annals of Internal Medicine. 70% of people who responded to a follow-up survey said they were somewhat or definitely unlikely to get a flu shot in the traditional way, and 80% said the program's convenience was a significant reason for why they got vaccinated. So in terms of making it easy for people to get the vaccination, it was a total success.
Yeah.
I assume that the $10 is probably cheaper than the trip to the doctor's office to get it done.
Yeah.
It obviously worked, at least at break even for Uber, because this wasn't a profit-making venture as far as I can see. I think this was just a, suck it and see, and maybe they'll launch it as a thing in a year or two's time, and then it might be 15 and they'd make a little bit of money on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it seems like a nice little project, and it could have a lot of legs in terms of getting medicines to people.
Yeah, it's Uber's always been one of those companies that is has always troubled me. Its convenience is phenomenal. Like, I do use Uber. I land at Heathrow, I use Uber, and I go to the office in Chiswick Park. It is the most easy and affordable way to do it. Yeah. No doubt about it. But at the end of the day, the companies run like a frat house with questionable
ethics,
morals and ethics.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
but when they do things like this as well, it's
exactly. Is this the rehabilitation of Uber? I don't know.
We're a bit conflicted, I can tell.
Yeah, I'm very conflicted. But it reflects a completely different way of how we actually. It's an exemplification of how different our lives are now than our parents' lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's just convenience for the sake of convenience." But when you look at 70% of those people said they wouldn't get a flu shot the traditional way.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal number.
Exactly.
And 80% said the convenience was a significant reason why they got vaccinated.
Yeah.
So when you start to look at it and you think, well, actually, that's that, and it was 486 people.
Yeah. So it wasn't a sample of 10 people. It was a significant. Well, you know, it wasn't 1,000 people, but it was still 486. It was a pretty representative number.
So, and we have to remember that flu shots are not, you know, in the UK, the flu shots are for the elderly, for children, and for people at risk, so pregnant women or people with compromised immune systems and things like that. So it's not a massive cross section of society. So I think it's a phenomenal program, and it holds so much promise.
Yeah. So
it really does, and it means that, you know, like any taxi company, there are times when they're busy and times whenever they're not busy. So being able actually to balance that workload, it actually makes Uber as a company more financially secure.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And the drivers as well, being able to offer these services. I think Uber were talking about doing courier services as well.
That's right. And well, the poor drivers, as soon as the cars become autonomous, they're out the door.
True. Yes. Yes, there is that aspect to it. But it's one of those ones you sit and you think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
So it is. You know, think about it. You could actually, if Uber paired with healthcare companies, they could actually have a car sent, you know, as part of your appointment, sent to your door, actually to take you there, rather than having a text message or something to remind you of your appointment. You know, you can actually have the car sent to your door.
In this case, it went further and brought the healthcare provider too.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is true. But yeah, no, that's it's an awesome idea.
And the other thing that we forgot to mention actually is they also said to people, if you're getting the flu shot, see if you can get other people in your office to get it as well.
Yes.
So they got it out more broadly, doing it that way as well. What was it? The $10 brought patients a wellness bag with flu prevention supplies and the option to request up to 10 free flu shots for other people on site, like relatives or co-workers, administered by registered nurses with Passport Health, a travel medicine clinic. So, I mean, it was extremely well thought out, I gotta say.
Yeah, but here's the other thing that I've just actually noticed. It was only for 4 hours on Thursday, and they managed to administer in 4 cities over 2,000 flu shots in 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. I wonder how much notice people had that it was going to be done.
Don't know. It probably it was probably done in conjunction with either an outreach service or their healthcare provider.
Yeah.
But that, you know, 2,000 in 4 hours across 4 cities that's not bad. That's
huge.
Not bad at all.
It is huge. Yeah, it is. All right, that was the last story, Chris.
Yes.
And we didn't go that far over. Not even 10 minutes.
We did not indeed. We must be slipping. Must be all that. Must be all that.
I blame
from the turkey we've had at Thanksgiving.
That's it. I blame the Thanksgiving and the lack of stories.
Yes. Although, to all our American friends and colleagues and viewers, happy Thanksgiving yesterday and happy Black Friday today.
Indeed.
Indeed.
All right, have a good one, folks.
Yes.
Come back, same time, same channel next week. And in the meantime, have a good weekend.
Yep. Cheers. Thanks, guys.